Hi, my name is Valerie. I've been teaching economics for 15 years. And for 15 years, my students have been asking me to record these lectures so that they can show it to their friends and family. This is going to be a course, Principles of Economics, which combines microeconomics and macroeconomics together. As we go through the lectures, I will point out whether that's more a part of a macroeconomics or microeconomics. Let's start from the definition of economics. I'm going to present it just like I have been for the past 15 years. I usually write it out on a board so you have the visual. It's always better to see what I'm talking about. Economics. It's how society manages and allocates its scarce resources. Scarcity is also an important word here. We have a limited amount of resources, limited amount of water, fresh water, limited amount of fish, limited amount of animals. That's what scarcity means, the limited nature of society's resources. And in economics, we deal how to allocate those scarce resources among the members of our society. One of the first principles of economics is that we all have trade-off. Trade-off is, in essence, what you have to give up to get something else. The principle of trade-off is you trade off one thing for another. And one of the first trade-offs that we present in economics is a trade-off between efficiency and quality. I'm going to start using a lot of formula notations here, and as we go, I will explain what they are just so I don't have to write out as many words. Trade-off means if we get more of one, we have to give up the other. So it's an inverse relationship. And we have efficiency on one end and equality on the other end. Arrow up means an increase, and a double arrow to the side like that will mean leads to. So an increase in efficiency, because there is a trade-off, would lead to a decrease in equality. And those two are very different. You can think of them as kind of being on the opposite end of the spectrum. This is, of course, a very basic, simplistic representation of the trade-off between efficiency and equality, but it helps on these early stages to start grasping the idea of a trade-off and also the definitions of efficiency and equality. You can think of efficiency and equality as located on a line, with one end being equality, perfectly equal society. And on the other end, we will have efficiency, perfectly efficient society. So what do those definitions mean? Efficiency is when society is getting the most from its scarce resources. So we're getting the most from scarce resources. In equality, those resources are distributed uniformly among the members of the society. Uniformly. Or everybody gets the same amount of resources. We all tend to prefer different things. It depends whether you're male or female, whether you're a young, healthy individual or an elderly individual, or possibly a disabled individual. We don't really have a perfectly efficient society. United States, capitalistic societies usually strive toward efficiency. That is going to be United States. So you see, we are not perfectly efficient, but we are getting closer to efficiency. Cuba strives more for equality. So more communist countries, politically speaking, strive towards equality. Cuba is not perfectly equal, but it is closer to equality on this very simple representation of a trade-off between efficiency and equality. But then we have countries, like a lot of countries in the European Union, politically speaking, would be called socialist countries. And they're not exactly in the middle, but closer to the middle, where they have both equality and efficiency. But remember, all of those countries face a trade-off. Countries in the European Union, not as close to equality as Cuba, but they're also further away from efficiency than the United States. Obviously, once again, this is not in the middle. Not every country in the European Union is going to be in the middle right here, but just start thinking within those terms. For any one of those countries, if they want to increase equality, then they will probably sacrifice efficiency. There's different policies that will have effect on efficiency and equality that different countries and the United States implement, but just to give you an idea, lowering taxes will increase efficiency for any one of those countries, which means higher efficiency. That also means their quality will decrease, and vice versa. If they increase taxes and spend more on social programs, they will increase equality. And if equality increases, there is a trade-off. Means efficiency will decrease. And that's one of the first trade-offs that we have. Trade-off between efficiency and equality. When we talk about trade-off, we actually have a specific terminology in economics, and it's called opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is anything you have to give up to get something else. In economics, when we talk of cost, we have to take all the costs in consideration, which is the opportunity cost. So let me give you an example. If you decide to go to lunch with your friends, what you're going to spend is the money that you spend on food at a restaurant. Let's say it's $20. But then you still have to drive to that restaurant. If you have a gas car, depends on a car, maybe it is $10 for you to go back and forth. And if it's further away, could be even more money. So what that means, so far, you spend the money that you spent on actual lunch, which is $20. You also spend $10 in gas, which adds to this cost. Opportunity cost is everything that you have to give up. So that's already $30 in some of the cost. But on top of it, let's say you spend 2 hours on driving and actually having lunch with your friend. That is 2 hours that you could have been working. And let's say you get $20 an hour at your job. So that's another $40. Just the time value is $40 to go to that lunch, for which you paid for food $20 and you spend your gas to get there, which is additional $10. So for you to go to this lunch with your friend, you didn't just spend the $20 that you spent on the food while you were at a restaurant. You in total spent $70. And you see, the biggest part of it actually came from your time. That's why we have a saying, time is money, because time is the money that you could have been earning while you're at work. I usually say in economics, we don't really have a lot of morals. We just have cost-benefit analysis, which we'll be talking about later on as well. But this is the cost that we're talking about. And if the benefit is higher than a cost, we will take the action. If the cost is higher than a benefit, we will not take the action. The value of your time for all of you will be different. If you're still a student, it might be less. If you are highly educated, highly experienced person, it will be more. So let's say for a student, it could be $20. But for a lawyer, for an example, it could be thousands of dollars. So for a lawyer to have a 2-hour lunch, that could be easily $2,000 that they're giving up on top of the money that they actually spend for lunch. So the more education, the more experience you have, the higher the value of your time is. And therefore, for you to do anything, the opportunity cost of your time is much higher. That's actually why they say it is best to go to college when you're still young and lack the time for experience. Because once you accumulate experience, the value of your time is more expensive. So for you to actually take the time to go to college will be more expensive than the value of your time. Another example for the opportunity cost, let's say you would like to go to university. You would have to pay your tuition. However much that is, it will depend on the university. You will probably have to pay for all kinds of books and supplies. On top of that, you're going to give up 4 years of your time. If you're more experienced, the value of your time to go to college will be a lot higher. The total opportunity cost of going to the university will be higher for somebody who is older with more experience and possibly more education. And it will be lower for a younger person who has less experience and previous education. But all of these costs will have to be considered before a person decides to go to college. And some people, for an example, professional athletes, drop out of college because the value of their time becomes so high. Meaning, if they stay in college, they will not get that multi-million contract. So it actually, economically speaking, the opportunity cost of going to college becomes so high that it is more beneficial for them to drop out of college. There are some costs that will not be included here. Opportunity cost of going to the university. Something like food. You would have to eat food no matter whether you went to the university or not. So food is not the opportunity cost of going to the university. Also, like rent. Whatever rent you pay, you would have to pay that anyways. So that's not a part of going to the university. Transportation, though, will be included. Anything you pay on actual transportation to get to the university will be included in the opportunity cost. So like I said, opportunity cost is one of the most important concepts that you have to grasp, because from now on, whenever we say cost, I will be talking about the opportunity cost. Moving on to the next. Market is a group of buyers and sellers for a particular product. And most of the economies all over the world is what we call market economy. Throughout the time, we have figured out how to allocate our scarce resources that we talked about before. And the way we allocate our scarce resources among the members of a society is through a market, where buyers and sellers come together and through prices determine who gets the resources. The United States, for an example, is a market economy. In a market, when buyers and sellers interact, they determine prices and quantities for a certain product. Most of the countries all over the world have a market economy. What happens in a market economy is that prices, P from now on is always going to stand for price. Q is always going to stand for quantity. So in a market economy, prices and quantities are determined by the interaction of buyers and sellers. And these buyers and sellers are actually guided by what we call an invisible hand. This invisible hand is something that Adam Smith discussed in his book Wealth of Nations in the late 1700s. And what he meant by an invisible hand is pursuit of self-interest. In other words, Adam Smith says that we're all selfish people, but he says it's actually not a bad thing. It could actually be a good thing. The buyers are looking out for their best self-interest, which is they want to buy a product at the lowest price. Sellers in the market are also looking out for their best self-interest, which means they want to sell at the highest price. These buyers and sellers come together and start negotiating in a market. And eventually they come to a negotiable price, which is considered mutually beneficial price. And we're going to learn later on it's also an efficient price. The markets, Adam Smith said, can allocate resources efficiently without anybody's help. In economics, we actually have a joke about this invisible hand. If you think about it, Adam Smith talked about invisible hand in the late 1700s. We had slavery in pretty much most of the countries all over the world. The joke goes as, and a warning, economic jokes are usually not funny and kind of depressing, but here it goes anyways. What is the difference between physical slavery and economic slavery? And the difference is, physical slavery is when somebody owns you and tells you what to do. And at the end of the day, they have to provide you with food and shelter. Economic slavery is when somebody owns you and tells you what to do. But at the end of the day, they do not even have to pay you enough for you to be able to afford food and shelter. And Adam Smith was actually right. If you think about slave owners of that time are the corporations of today, and corporate profits are much higher than slave owners' profits ever were. Adam Smith was the first to argue against slavery from the economics perspective, not the moral perspective. So he actually said that slave owners will make more money if they don't have slaves, but free the slaves and hire them back as workers. And it didn't make sense to a lot of people. How would they make more money if they actually have to pay for their workers? But remember, we have to do cost-benefit analysis. The cost of owning the slave is not just the shelter and the food that you have to provide for them, but also slave owners spend a lot of money to catch the runaway slaves. Slaves didn't like their conditions, obviously, so they wanted to run away. And that was a very expensive operation to return those slaves. In a process, some of them were killed or injured. Also, slaves had incentives to sabotage their work. Sometimes they would destroy property. That was also costly to the slave owners. That's all the cost of owning the slaves. Now, if we move more to the corporate world where we have jobs, what is happening there is you still have a corporation that tells you what to do. When slaves were freed, the newly freed slaves didn't really have anywhere to go. So a lot of them stayed with their slave masters, but instead of being slaves, they transferred into jobs. They were told how many hours per day they were going to work, a certain amount of hours, or they paid per basket of cotton. And now it is your personal responsibility as a worker. If you did not make enough money to be able to afford your food and shelter, it is your fault because you are the one responsible for working more hours or for working harder during the time that you do work so you do make more money. Slaves had no incentives to run away because where are they going to go? If they go to another similar job. They also didn't have any incentive to sabotage their work or to destroy property because that would just be taken out of their pay. So therefore, the cost of having a worker was significantly reduced compared to the cost of owning a slave. And yes, today's corporations make a lot more money than slave owners ever thought. We also make an assumption that we're only going to have rational people. Obviously, that's not always possible, but we're going to make this assumption. So everybody we're going to have, remember, this is very simple, basic economics. And we're going to make an assumption that everybody is rational. Actually, the whole economic principle is based on that. But it reads more like not that everybody is rational all the time, but it's actually majority of the people are rational majority of the time. And what rational people do, they make decisions based on cost and benefit analysis. They're going to compare the benefit of their action to the cost of their action. And when we say cost, remember, we mean opportunity cost. And they will only take this action if the benefit is higher than a cost. If the cost is higher than a benefit, they will not take the action. If the benefit is, let's say, $600 and the cost is 601, that means the cost is already higher. So we will not take the action because the cost is higher than the benefit. But if the benefit even a penny larger, then we will take the action because the benefit is higher than the cost. In other words, rational people don't throw away penny. Even a penny that is given to you is beneficial to you. So you will take an action as long as the benefit even slightly higher than the cost, and vice versa. Rational people also respond to incentives. Incentives is a prospect of reward or punishment to make a person act a certain way. For an example, we can achieve exactly the same goal by either giving a reward or a punishment. I usually give an example to my students that if everybody shows up on time to class, then they will get an automatic A. That will be a reward. An incentive, most likely, people will show up to class on time. Or I can give a negative incentive saying, if you're just 1 minute late, you will get an automatic F in class. That will also achieve the goal. So the same goal can be achieved. Everybody's going to be on time by giving a reward or a punishment. Next, we have a saying that trade can make everyone better off. Let's say we have Tiger Woods, who is a successful golf player. Not sure if he still plays, might. But either way, he can make a lot of money playing golf or showing up for events or making a commercial. And the question would be, should Tiger Woods cut his own grass at his house? And let's say Tiger Woods is the best at cutting grass. There's nobody that can cut grass better and faster than Tiger Woods. But on the same hand, Tiger Woods should not cut his grass because the opportunity cost of his time is so high, it could be millions of dollars. In an hour that it takes him to cut the grass, he can make $1 million or even more, making an appearance, playing golf, or filming a commercial. Therefore, even if it takes 10 people to cut the grass for Tiger Woods, that it would have taken himself, the same amount of time, he should not cut his own grass. He should hire the people. In other words, Tiger Woods is the best at cutting grass, and he should not cut the grass. He should hire somebody else who might not be as fast as he is at cutting grass, and he will still benefit from it because then he can spend his time where it's more valuable, like filming a commercial. Next, we will talk about the government intervention in the market. Sometimes governments can improve market outcome, but most of the times we in economics do not want governments intervening in the market. Because once again, going back to The Invisible Hand by Adam Smith, markets are already going to be efficient. They're already going to achieve the best allocation of resources due to this interaction between buyers and sellers guided by the invisible hand. But in certain cases, and only in those certain cases, we do need government intervention. For an example, number one reason we need government and nobody else will do it, neither buyers or sellers will do it themselves, is establishment of property rights. Property rights are extremely important for our current economy to function. With regards to the property rights, we need to establish property rights. And the way we do it, we need police and courts. So for an example, if you own a house and somebody comes and steals something from your house or just tells you to get out at gunpoint, you can call the police and they will establish those property rights and get your house back. Without the police, it will be the Wild West, and whoever has a bigger gun will have the house. If a contract is violated, you will take the offender to court and they will have to pay you some money as a result of it. No private individual out of pocket will pay for police or courts unless you're very rich and you want to police your own neighborhood. Most of the time, private individuals do not have incentives because it is extremely expensive to hire a police force for the whole neighborhood. You need to all put out money together through taxation. And then those police and courts will be established. And therefore, our property rights will not be violated. And if they were, there will be consequences for that. The way this happens is through taxation. We need to collect taxes. So the government collects taxes and pays for police and courts. And therefore, we get the benefit of the property right. The second reason that we need government intervention is to prevent markets from failing, which we call market failure. Markets fail when they do not allocate resources efficiently. And that happens because of two reasons. One is externalities. Externalities is uncompensated impact of somebody's action on a bystander. If you're the bystander, let's say you're not causing any action, but you're negatively or positively affected by it. Let's talk about a negative externality. Let's say you buy a house in the neighborhood next to a factory that pollutes. You did not do anything to cause that pollution, but your health is going to be negatively affected by that pollution. If you go ask that factory to pollute less, I'm not sure that's going to achieve anything. And therefore, the government will need to step in and control, for an example, the level of pollution by telling the company they cannot produce more than a certain level of pollution, or they have to install certain filters. Another reason markets may fail where we need government to intervene is because of market power. Market power is when a single buyer or a seller, usually the seller, has a control over market price. For example, let's say you are the only one selling bottled water, and a lot of people drink bottled water, so we need bottled water. If you are the only store selling bottled water, you will have a total market power. That would be an example of monopoly. You're the only firm, the only company, the only store selling bottled water. Everybody who wants bottled water will have to buy it from you. And therefore, you can name your price. And whoever has the money, they will pay for it. Whoever doesn't have the money will not pay for it. The government can intervene, break up the monopoly, just like they did with Microsoft in the early 90s. Next topic is productivity. Productivity is output per worker per hour. For an example, say you are a factory worker, you're making chairs. Your output per worker per hour would be how many chairs can you make in 1 hour of work. And there's a lot of factors going to contribute to higher productivity. One of them is education. If you have more education, you're going to be able to most likely make more chairs per hour. Skills and training will allow you to be more productive as well. Better health is going to allow you to be more productive. If you have better tools, you're going to be able to make more chairs. If you're a healthier worker, you're going to be making those chairs faster. And if you get a cold, you're probably not going to be moving as fast, so your productivity will decrease. So we're actually going to come up with a formula for productivity. But right now, let's talk about why productivity is important. And productivity is important for number one reason, that it determines the standard of living. If we increase productivity, that means that will increase the standard of living for any country, and vice versa. If for some reason productivity decreases, that will decrease the standard of living for a country. So number one reason that the standard of living in a country are increasing, it's because their productivity increased. The last thing we're going to talk about is the short-run trade-off between inflation and unemployment. Trade-off means if increase one, the other one must decrease. SR will stand for short run. In a short run, we say there is a trade-off between inflation and unemployment. So what that means, if we have higher inflation in a short run, that would lead to trade-off in unemployment or lower unemployment. How does that work? I usually explain a lot has to do with confusion. When we have inflation, let's say inflation of 100%, inflation of 100% means all the prices double. But not everybody is going to change their prices at the same time. Some people might be able to just quickly change their prices because they have an online store and all they have to do is just press a couple of buttons. But other people actually have menus that they have to reprint, or they have thousands of merchandise on shelves that they have to resticker every single one of them. The bottom line is that some companies might be able to change these prices faster than others. So let's say you're selling burgers and you have bought a huge warehouse full of burger stuff, whatever goes on it, the buns, the lettuce, the meat, and you're making burgers. And then suddenly you hear inflation is 100%. So you say, hey, I'm going to change my burger prices right now. It's not going to take me long. You print all the menus. Next day, you double the prices of your burger. But you still bought all the ingredients at the previous prices. So in your mind, you're thinking you're actually making more money per burger because your ingredients were at the old prices. You think you're making more money, so you want to make even more burgers. So you hire more people, and that's why unemployment decreases. But within a couple of months, or even a couple of weeks, depends on how big your warehouse is, you're going to have to reorder all those ingredients. And once you reorder all the ingredients, you realize that they also double their prices. You're not actually making more money. And therefore, once you realize this, you're going to lay off all the people that you just hired and go back to the previous level of unemployment. This short-run trade-off between inflation and unemployment, I usually say, is due to confusion. And it could take anywhere from 6 months to 2 years for everybody to adjust their prices and the confusion dissipate. In the long run, we say there is no trade-off. And whether inflation increases or decreases, inflation have no effect on unemployment. It only happens in a short run. There's probably going to be 3 lectures that I will teach him all about inflation, unemployment in the long run and in a short run. That is it for today's lecture. Thank you for coming. If you are still there, please subscribe.